There came to me last week a man who had been applying what he called my technique for over a year. He had visualized wealth. He had written affirmations. He had created, as he said, a vision of abundance in his mind every single day. And yet his bank account remained unchanged. He was exhausted. He felt he had failed. But I tell you tonight, he had not failed. He had never actually applied the law at all. What he had done feels to most people like work. What I will show you tonight feels like cheating. And that is precisely why it works. Listen carefully, my friend. The technique I am about to describe will offend your reason. It will seem too simple. It will seem dishonest, as though you are lying to yourself. But an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Most of you hearing me now have been working to get wealth. Tonight I will show you how to work from wealth. There is a difference. And that difference is everything. Now, why do I say this man never applied the law at all? Because everything he did began from the premise that he lacked money. Every visualization, every affirmation, every effort, he was trying to get what he did not have, and so in consciousness he affirmed lack. The world is yourself pushed out. If you are conscious of lacking, the world must reflect that lack back to you. It can do nothing else. The technique I will show you tonight begins from an entirely different premise. You do not try to get wealth, you assume you already have it. And this, my friend, feels like cheating. It feels dishonest. It feels as though you are lying to yourself. But let me ask you this. When you sit in a chair, do you doubt the chair will hold you? No, you simply sit. That is assumption. You assume the chair supports you, and it does. You do not effort, you do not strain, you simply assume. Now apply this same principle to money. Assume you have it, not tomorrow, not when conditions change. Now, assume it with the same naturalness with which you assume the chair beneath you, and persist in that assumption until the outer world conforms. This is the law. Consciousness is the only reality. Money is not a thing outside of you that you must chase or attract. Money is a state of consciousness, make no mistake. Most people will reject this the moment they hear it. They will say, "But Neville, I have bills to pay, I have debts, I cannot simply pretend I am wealthy when my bank account is empty." And to them I say, you have misunderstood me entirely. I am not asking you to pretend, I am asking you to assume. There is a vast difference. Pretense is surface. Pretense is the mind saying words it does not believe. Assumption is depth. Assumption is consciousness inhabiting a state and remaining there until that state externalizes as fact. When I say assume you are wealthy, I mean enter the state of wealth in your consciousness. Feel as a wealthy person feels. Not hope to feel, not wish to feel. Feel now. But hold this thought, my friend. There is a specific signal, a feeling you must learn to recognize that tells you whether the assumption has actually taken root or whether you are merely pretending. Without that signal, you will practice this technique and wonder why nothing changes. I will give you that signal in just a moment, after I show you where most go wrong. Let me tell you of a woman who came to me many years ago when I was lecturing in New York. She had been widowed and left with very little. She had two young children. She told me she had been praying for money for months. She had visualized checks arriving in the mail. She had written out affirmations on cards and read them aloud each morning, and yet nothing had changed. She was exhausted from the effort. She felt she had failed God, failed herself, failed her children. I asked her one question. I said, "When you visualize the check, how do you feel?" She paused. Then she said, "I feel desperate. I feel I need it so badly." There, you see, was the error. She was visualizing from the state of need, and need is lack. Lack perpetuates lack. I told her to stop visualizing entirely. I told her to stop affirming. She looked at me as though I had lost my reason. She said, "But Neville, if I stop doing these things, what will I do?" I said, "You will assume." She did not understand. At first she resisted. She said it could not be that simple. But I persisted. I instructed her to go home that night and lie in her bed. I told her to enter the drowsy state, that state akin to sleep just before you lose consciousness. And from that state, I told her to assume she already had the money she needed, not to beg for it, not to visualize it coming, but to feel the relief of already having it, to feel the calm certainty that her children were provided for, to feel financially secure, and then in that feeling to fall asleep. She came back to me 2 weeks later. She had done exactly as I instructed. And within those 2 weeks, a distant cousin she had not heard from in years contacted her. This cousin had recently sold a piece of property and felt, as he said, impressed to send her a portion of the proceeds. It was more than enough to meet her need. She had not manipulated him. She had not contacted him. She had simply assumed the state of wealth, and the bridge of incidents was constructed without her conscious effort. You see, my friend, she did not create the means. She assumed the end, and the means appeared. This is what I mean when I say it feels like cheating. She did nothing in the outer world. She did not labor. She did not scheme. She simply rested in a state of consciousness, and the Lord did the work. Now you may ask, what is this state of consciousness I speak of? Let me be clear. Consciousness is not your thinking. It is not your wishing. It is not your hoping. Consciousness is what you are aware of being. Right now, what are you conscious of being? Are you conscious of being someone who lacks money? Or are you conscious of being someone who has money? Not what you hope to be. What you are conscious of being now. The world reflects your state of consciousness, not your wishes. I have told you before, but I will tell you again. The world is yourself pushed out. What you are conscious of being, you are. Change your consciousness and you change your world. It is as simple and as difficult as that. Now I must insist on this, my friend, because I have seen too many who claim to apply the law and yet they do not. Most people hear this and immediately they begin to effort. They try to force themselves to feel wealthy. They strain. They repeat affirmations they do not believe. They create vision boards and stare at them with clenched fists. And this, my friend, is the very opposite of assumption. Do not let anyone, including yourself, talk you into believing that effort is required. Effort implies lack. If you must strain to feel wealthy, you are affirming you are not wealthy. Do you see the contradiction? Now here is where the lecture turns. Most who hear me stop right here in their understanding and miss the deeper truth. They understand that assumption is not effort, but they do not understand what assumption actually is. There is a precise quality to the feeling of assumption, and it is this quality that separates those who manifest in days from those who never do. I will give you that quality now. Assumption is effortless. When you assume a thing, you rest in it. You do not labor to maintain it. You simply remain in that state. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was a young man in Barbados, I wanted to come to America. I had no means. I had no money for passage. I had no connections, but I assumed I was in America. I did not try to figure out how I would get there. I did not scheme or plot. I simply assumed in my imagination that I was already here. I felt the ground of New York beneath my feet. I heard the sounds of the city. I inhabited that state. And within a short time, my family, who had previously refused to help me, suddenly and without explanation provided the money for my passage. I did not convince them. I did not beg. I assumed the end, and the means appeared. This is the law. It has never failed me, not once. Now I tell you tonight, you can apply this same law to money, but you must understand what you are doing. You are not trying to manipulate the outer world. You are not trying to force conditions to change. You are changing your state of consciousness, and when you change your state, the outer world must reflect that change. It is law. Here is what most do wrong. They assume once, they enter the feeling of wealth for a moment, and then they immediately return to the old state of lack. They check their bank account, they worry about bills, they affirm lack 100 times a day and wonder why one moment of assumption did not change their world. My friend, assumption must be persisted in. An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. But you must persist. The second error is this. They assume the wealth and then they test the assumption. They look for evidence in the outer world, and when they do not see it immediately, they abandon the assumption and return to doubt. Do not do this. Live from the end. Do not look back. If you have assumed you are wealthy, then you are wealthy in consciousness. The outer world will catch up, but you must remain faithful to the state. Remember what I told you a few moments ago about that woman who came to me. She did not test the law. She did not check her mailbox each day looking for the money. She simply assumed, and the cousin appeared. Now this is where you see why faithfulness to the inner state is everything. The third error, and this is where I see the greatest failure, is this. They try to dictate how the money will come. They assume they will receive a raise, or they assume a specific person will give them money. And when it does not come through that channel, they believe the law has failed. The world will tell you that you must plan, that you must control the means, that you must know the how before you can have the end. I tell you they are wrong. The law does not require you to know the how. The law requires only that you assume the end. You do not create the means. You assume the end, and the means will appear. I have seen this happen countless times. A man assumes wealth, and an unexpected inheritance arrives. A woman assumes financial security, and a business opportunity she never conceived of presents itself. The law will construct the bridge, but you must not dictate the route. Assume the end, only the end. Before I tell you how to apply this tonight, there is one final piece. It is the piece that separates those who see their world respond in 2 weeks from those who practice for years and see nothing. There is a specific time of day, a specific state of mind, when the assumption either takes root in the subconscious or evaporates entirely. I must show you that moment now, for without it, the technique remains theory. Now let me tell you how to apply this tonight. You need only do this. When you retire to your bed this evening, you will enter that drowsy, sleepy state, that drowsiness just before you lose consciousness entirely. You know this state. In that state, the conscious mind relaxes its grip, the subconscious is impressionable, and it is in this state that assumption becomes most powerful. From that drowsy state, you will do this. First, you will bring to mind a scene that implies your wealth is already fulfilled. Not a scene of receiving money, a scene that implies you already have it. You see yourself looking at a bank statement that satisfies you. You feel the relief of knowing your bills are paid. You simply rest in the calm certainty of financial security. Choose one scene, one feeling. Do not complicate it. Second, you will enter that scene in your imagination, not as an observer, as the one living it. Feel it, feel the naturalness of it. Do not strain, do not effort. Simply rest in the feeling as though it is already true, because in consciousness it is true. Third, you will not try to hold the thought. You will not grip it tightly. You will simply remain in that gentle feeling, that quiet assumption. And as you remain in it, you will let yourself drift into sleep. You will fall asleep within the assumption of the wish fulfilled. And fourth, you will repeat this every night. Not once, not twice, every night until the assumption hardens into fact. Persistence, my friend. Persistence is the key. The outer world will conform, but you must remain faithful to the inner state. Do not check your bank account the next morning to see if it worked. Do not test the law. Live from the end. If you have assumed you are wealthy, then you are wealthy. Act from that conviction. Feel from that conviction, and let the outer world rearrange itself to match. This is the technique. Simple, is it not? And yet I tell you, most who hear me will not do it. They will say it is too simple. They will say it cannot work. Or they will do it once, see no immediate change, and abandon it. But those who persist, those who dare to assume in the face of contradiction, those who remain faithful to the inner state regardless of outer appearances, they will prove the law. I have seen it proven time and time again. You have heard me speak of assumption, and many have misunderstood me. Let me be plain. The reason this feels like cheating, my friend, is because you have been taught that wealth must be earned through sweat and toil. You have been taught that money comes only through hard work, through struggle, through sacrifice. I do not deny that you may work, but I tell you, if you work from the assumption of wealth, your work will be blessed. If you work from the assumption of lack, your work will perpetuate lack. There is no such thing as attracting money from outside yourself. Put it from your mind. Money does not exist outside of consciousness. The outer world, the world of banks and checks and bills, is only a shadow cast by consciousness. Change the consciousness, and the shadow must change. You are not at the mercy of conditions. Conditions are at the mercy of your assumptions. I say to you tonight with absolute certainty, and this is not opinion, it is law. What you are conscious of being, you are. This law works. I have proven it in my own life. I have seen it proven in the lives of countless men and women who have heard me and applied what I have told them. It is not theory, it is law, and law does not fail. And now I tell you, my friend, the secret of why this technique feels like cheating. It is because the world has taught you that you must earn everything, that you must work for it, that you must deserve it before you can have it. But the law I have shown you tonight requires none of that. The law requires only assumption. You assume the wish fulfilled, and the law does the rest. You do not create the bridge, you do not orchestrate the means, you simply enter the state of the wish fulfilled and remain there. And from that state, the world has no choice but to conform. This is why it feels dishonest, because consciousness, not effort, is the creative power. Tonight, when you retire to your bed, do this just once. Enter that drowsy state. Assume you already have the wealth you desire. Feel the relief of it, the calm certainty, the naturalness, and then fall asleep in that assumption. That is all. In the morning, you may find that nothing has changed in the outer world. Do not be discouraged. The assumption must be persisted in. Return to it night after night until it hardens into fact. Or you may find, as so many have found, that the bridge of incidents begins to appear within days. Both are well, my friend. Both are well. Remember always, imagining creates reality. The world is yourself pushed out. What you assume in consciousness must externalize as fact. This is not hope, this is law. May you sleep tonight in the Sabbath rest of your assumption. May the wish fulfilled become as natural to you as breathing. And may you wake to find that the outer world has conformed to your inner conviction. Until we meet again, my friend, live from the end.